Keir Starmer would lock him up. How dare you make comments about his death when you're responsible for this shit? People with your mindset, condemning people, putting targets on them, lying about them, and then pretending you give a shit. Absolute fucking hypocrisy.
I've gone through his video and
how have I incited him?
He hasn't.
This is free speech. This is where we're at.
But hang on a minute, let's put it a different way. If the Prime Minister has lied to the Commons, do you agree that's a resignation event?
Yes.
Therefore, I'm asking you, Laura Trott, and you've been tweeting about this today. You've tweeted the following.
Moments ago, history was rewritten in front of the entire nation. Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, was forced to resign. And the eyes of the country turned to King Charles, watching every move as chaos erupted across Westminster. Within hours, as social media exploded, cabinet ministers were in turmoil and loyal MPs scrambled to contain a crisis that has shaken the very foundations of Britain. Secrets, betrayals and covert meetings that were never meant to see the light of day have now been exposed, and the country stands on the edge of an unprecedented political storm. It began quietly, almost imperceptibly, within the gilded halls of Whitehall, but the shockwaves spread faster than anyone could imagine. Early this morning, sources reveal, King Charles summoned key figures to a private meeting in Buckingham Palace, a gathering that had never been officially acknowledged. Rumours had been circulating for weeks that tensions between the monarchy and the Prime Minister had reached an all-time high, but few expected this. Ministers left the palace visibly shaken. Whispers of unprecedented rebuke and historical confrontation escaping into the corridors of power. By the time news broke, the streets of London were already alive with anticipation, television networks scrambling to cover the unfolding story, and social media exploding as millions demanded answers. The scale of the crisis is staggering. Starmer, once confident and unassailable, found himself isolated as his own cabinet debated whether to stand by him or abandon him in the face of royal disapproval and mounting public outrage. Emails leaked overnight show frantic conversations between senior aides, with phrases like "total collapse imminent" and "we cannot contain this" appearing repeatedly. The mood inside Labour headquarters was one of disbelief and panic. Aides pacing, phones ringing off the hook, text messages flying faster than the eye could follow. And yet, for the public, the spectacle was just beginning. Protesters gathered outside Downing Street hours before the resignation was officially announced, holding banners demanding accountability, their chants echoing off the historic buildings in a display of raw national anger. Political commentators, often cautious and measured, were left stunned. Some openly calling it the biggest political earthquake in a generation. But it wasn't just the public reaction that signalled the severity of the crisis. The intelligence reports quietly circulated to select officials revealed deep fractures within the party, with backbenchers openly questioning Starmer's ability to lead and whispering about alternative leadership. The monarchy's involvement, though shrouded in discretion, was unmistakable. Courtiers confirmed that the king expressed grave concern over secret agreements and policy decisions, pushing Starmer into a corner from which there was no easy escape. Every cabinet meeting became a stage for tension, every conversation a potential leak, and every decision a possible spark for nationwide outrage. Within hours, the country was gripped by fear, anger, and disbelief. Newspapers ran front pages with screaming headlines, pundits demanded live debates, and every social media feed was flooded with speculation, outrage and disbelief. This was not a political disagreement. It was a confrontation that questioned the legitimacy, loyalty and leadership of one of the most powerful men in Britain. And yet, amid the chaos, Starmer remained outwardly composed in public statements, attempting to project calm and confidence. But insiders say the cracks were already visible. His team fragmented, aides resigned in protest, and whispers of betrayal echoed through the offices he once controlled. The resignation did not come as a sudden decision. It was the result of relentless pressure, orchestrated moves, and strategic leaks designed to corner the Prime Minister, forcing him into an impossible choice. Behind closed doors, Starmer argued, pleaded and tried to negotiate, but the combined weight of the monarchy's disapproval, the public's outrage, rage and internal party rebellion left him with only one path: And then, as the nation watched with bated breath, the announcement came is Keir Starmer would step down, effective immediately. The statement was brief, almost cold, and delivered in a tone that masked the storm of emotion beneath. But the ramifications were explosive. Within minutes, MPs were filing out of Parliament, television channels went into non-stop coverage, and the streets filled with citizens demanding answers and justice. Questions of loyalty, morality, and power reverberated across the nation. How could one man's decisions lead to such an immediate and dramatic collapse? Who within the inner circle orchestrated the moves that left the Prime Minister isolated? And most importantly, what does this mean for the future of Britain, its democracy, and the fragile balance between tradition and elected power? As the first shockwaves hit, analysts warned that this was only the beginning. A domino effect of resignations, accusations, and political upheaval was already in motion. Inside the palace, whispers of further interventions, secret meetings, and unprecedented steps to preserve the nation's stability were circulating. Across social media, ordinary citizens debated, argued, and planned, while politicians braced for the fallout, understanding that no one would emerge unscathed. And as the sun set over London, casting shadows over the historic buildings that have witnessed centuries of political battles, one question hung heavier than all others. Could the nation survive the storm that had just been unleashed? Or was Britain on the brink of a collapse unlike anything seen in modern history? As the news of Starmer's forced resignation swept across the nation, the reverberations were immediate, undeniable, and explosive. Within minutes, journalists flooded the press galleries, their microphones thrust forward, capturing stunned MPs, frantic aides, and shocked cabinet members as the reality of the crisis began to sink in. The atmosphere in Westminster was electric. Whispers of betrayal, secret deals, and leaked memos filled the corridors, each conversation carrying the weight of a nation on edge. Inside the palace, courtiers moved quickly, relaying messages between the king and senior officials, ensuring that every action, every statement, and every decision aligned with the unprecedented gravity of the situation. Across London, screens lit up with live coverage of politicians arriving at emergency meetings, their faces tight with tension, their eyes betraying fear, anger, and the knowledge that the rules of governance had just shifted irrevocably. The Labour Party, once a symbol of disciplined authority and political direction, fractured almost instantly. Senior MPs, sensing the tide of public and royal opinion, submitted resignation letters in rapid succession, their signatures echoing through the press offices like a drumbeat of surrender. Shadow cabinet members abandoned plans for policy responses, instead scrambling to protect their own positions. Their movements observed, analysed and dissected by political opponents eager to exploit every crack in the crumbling leadership. Outside Parliament, demonstrators converged in unprecedented numbers, their chants deafening, their anger palpable, and their banners demanding accountability, justice and immediate action. Social media, the amplifier of modern outrage, ignited with hashtags, calls for inquiry, and viral clips of ministers leaving buildings in haste. Each post adding fuel to a fire that threatened to engulf the entire political establishment. Meanwhile, the palace remained a silent centre of gravity, with King Charles reportedly overseeing communications, reviewing strategy, and subtly influencing the direction of the unfolding crisis. Sources indicate that meetings were held with intelligence officials, security advisors, and senior civil servants to assess potential threats, political fallout, and public reaction. The scale of the disruption was staggering. Analysts compared it to historic moments of political upheaval, yet even they admitted that nothing in recent memory captured the suddenness, intensity, and moral weight of what had just transpired. The resignation itself was only the first domino. Overnight, news outlets reported that aides close to Starmer were being interrogated about leaks, meetings, and undisclosed decisions. Cabinet ministers faced impossible questions. Could they continue serving under a leadership now discredited by royal intervention? Were they complicit in the decisions that led to this collapse? And most importantly, could they maintain the trust of a public watching every move, every whisper, and every face for signs of integrity or betrayal. In local communities, ordinary citizens debated, argued, and protested with a ferocity rarely seen outside moments of national emergency. Markets reacted nervously, the pound fluctuated, and businesses across the country waited anxiously for clarity, uncertain whether the political vacuum would create economic turbulence or full-blown instability. Within Labour headquarters, internal communications revealed panic and recrimination. Senior strategists blamed junior staff, aides accused ministers of inaction, and a general sense of disorientation permeated every office. What had been a disciplined, centralised leadership structure crumbled under the combined pressures of royal disapproval, public outrage, and internal dissent. Political commentators described the scene as historic, shocking, and potentially catastrophic, noting that the implications extended far beyond Westminster. The nation's moral compass, its confidence in leadership, and the delicate balance of power between monarchy and government had all been thrown into uncertainty. Behind the scenes, leaked documents and confidential emails suggested that the king had acted not out of personal ambition, but from a perceived necessity to preserve the integrity of the state. His intervention, however, sparked heated debate across political and social spheres. Critics accused the monarchy of overreach, while supporters hailed decisive action in the face of corruption and failure. As the day wore on, reports surfaced of further resignations from Labour MPs, creating a cascading effect that threatened to paralyse the government entirely. Political parties scrambled to present candidates for leadership. Public opinion polls fluctuated wildly, and analysts speculated that the next weeks would determine not only the future of the Labour Party, but the very stability of the United Kingdom. Across the country, people watched anxiously, sensing that history was unfolding in real time, a story of power, betrayal, and moral reckoning playing out with no clear resolution in sight. And yet, amid the chaos, one question loomed larger than all others. With the Prime Minister gone, the Cabinet fractured, and the monarchy silently steering events from the shadows. Who would step forward to claim leadership, restore order, and prevent the nation from sliding into deeper turmoil? As night fell over London, the city shimmered with uncertainty. Streetlights reflecting the faces of citizens caught between awe, fear, and disbelief. Emergency meetings continued in secret, resignations threatened to multiply, and the weight of history pressed down on every decision. Each passing hour seemed to escalate the stakes, and the nation waited, breathless, for the next shocking development that could redefine the future of Britain. By the early hours, the full scale of the crisis was undeniable. London streets were alive with tension, a city transformed into a theatre of political spectacle. Protesters surged past the historic gates of Westminster, waving flags, chanting for justice, and demanding answers from leaders who seemed powerless in the face of unfolding events. Every news outlet broadcast non-stop coverage, turning what began as a palace intervention into a nationwide obsession. Cabinet offices were locked down as ministers huddled in emergency sessions, whispers of further resignations spreading like wildfire. Inside Whitehall, aides scrambled to secure documents, secure communications, and anticipate leaks, knowing that every word, every move could become headline news within minutes. The Labour Party, once disciplined and coherent, had fractured beyond recognition. Senior figures openly questioned each other's loyalty, blaming colleagues for decisions that had now shattered public trust. Emails surfaced showing frantic coordination among MPs trying to distance themselves from the turmoil, while others debated secretly about seizing leadership to prevent a complete collapse. Social media acted as both amplifier and judge. Citizens posted footage of ministers leaving buildings, argued over live stream news conferences, and speculated endlessly about hidden alliances, secret deals, and who had betrayed whom. Hashtags demanding transparency and resignations trended nationally, spreading outrage far beyond London. At Buckingham Palace, King Charles remained the silent pivot around which all events turned. Courtiers confirmed the monarch held emergency briefings, consulted with advisors, and monitored political developments hour by hour, ensuring the nation did not descend into lawless confusion. Sources reveal that the king's intervention, though discreet, was decisive. a calculated move to halt what many insiders described as unchecked power and reckless decision-making by the Prime Minister. Meanwhile, the international stage watched with bated breath. Reports indicated that foreign leaders from the United States to the European Union were closely monitoring Britain, concerned about political stability and the ability of its government to maintain diplomatic continuity. Stock markets fluctuated, analysts warned of economic consequences, and journalists speculated on whether this political earthquake would trigger long-term upheaval. Inside Parliament, the tension was palpable. MPs spoke in hushed tones, aides took frantic notes, and senior officials whispered warnings of constitutional consequences if the instability continued. Rumours of secret alliances, backroom deals, and political manoeuvring filled the air, each revelation more explosive than the last. Citizens, already frustrated with years of political scandal, felt vindicated but also terrified. Could Britain survive the rapid collapse of one of its major political parties? Would the monarchy continue to intervene, and if so, how far would it go to restore order? Reports of protests spreading beyond London to other major cities suggested that the public was no longer willing to stand by silently. Calls for action, accountability and reform echoed in the streets, creating pressure that even seasoned politicians found impossible to ignore. Inside Labour's fractured offices, senior MPs debated not only leadership succession, but the very future of the party itself. Would they risk a leadership election under the shadow of scandal, or attempt a quiet consolidation behind closed doors to regain some semblance of control? And as resignations continued to pour in, whispers of betrayal and opportunism intensified, leaving Starmer's once loyal supporters scrambling to maintain credibility. The media coverage intensified the drama, with round-the-clock speculation, expert panels, and leaked documents revealing more about the internal chaos than had ever been disclosed. Analysts described it as a political thriller unfolding in real time, noting that every new revelation seemed to accelerate the collapse rather than slow it. By midday, the nation had entered a state of collective suspense. Streets thrummed with anticipation, offices buzzed with fear and planning, and citizens followed each update with a mixture of awe, disbelief, and moral outrage. The resignation of Starmer, though just one event, had ignited a cascade of consequences that threatened to redefine Britain's political landscape, and yet, amid the chaos, questions remained unanswered. Who would rise from the ashes of this collapse to lead the party, the government, and the nation? Could the monarchy, acting as guardian of tradition, truly steer events to restore stability? And most pressing of all, what would this mean for the very balance between elected authority and royal influence in Britain's future? The answer for now remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: the country stands at a historic crossroads, with the drama of power, loyalty and moral responsibility unfolding live before its eyes, and the stakes higher than they have ever been.